Choosing parts for your brand new gaming computer should be an incredibly exciting time. Should be. 2021 is a bit of a weird one though, with bigger and faster graphics cards, beefier processors, and games that are more demanding and more buggy than ever before. Rest assured, however, that in this video, I'm going to walk you through all of my quick tips to help you get the most out of your money and get the gaming PC that's right for you. Forget about all of the noise, we're all different and we need to get the parts that make sense for us and nobody else. I don't think I could make this video without addressing all of the stock issues that people are having, the price increases, actually things getting held up at import now. It is sort of a nightmare, it's the best and worst time to buy PC components, but things will get better, and like pretty much everything in this business, always do your shopping with your head, not your heart, because it's very easy to rush into things, but in the long run, that's not really a great strategy. Are you after a killer new graphics card that doesn't break the bank? Gigabyte's Gaming OC graphics cards are the answers to your prayers. Get next generation performance with Nvidia RTX ray tracing, super smooth gameplay in the latest titles, and DLSS 2.0 technology for sky-high frame rates. Stay cool and quiet with a triple fan design whilst enjoying mouth-watering clock speeds straight out the box. Up the ante with Gigabyte today. Learn a little bit more with that link down below. Right, let's begin. And there's pretty much two main questions that you need to answer if you're thinking about buying a gaming PC. The first one is what's your budget, but the second, and arguably even more important, is what games are you actually wanting to play on this thing? These two questions are going to define your entire computer build, as you're going to be able to sculpt your PC around the things that it will actually spend its time computing. If you play games like Dota, Smite, or maybe Civilization, then you won't need anywhere near as much horsepower as, say, a maxed out Cyberpunk rig. You also need to ask yourself whether this computer is going to be used for anything other than gaming. Are you going to be doing some workloads on it, maybe some streaming, or do you have any special and more specific needs? A workstation will likely need more RAM and CPU power, a streaming den will need multiple monitors, and then a living room PC will probably want to be on the smaller side. Bearing in mind all of these things, you then bring your budget back into the equation and ask yourself how much you can realistically spend on a gaming PC. It's very important to be honest with yourself at this stage and set your expectations, as the more demanding the game, the more you're going to have to spend on the computer to get it looking and feeling its absolute best. A fantastic way to control the costs a little bit and bring the whole price down is to actually look at getting a lower resolution monitor, as this will save yourself some money on the screen itself and you won't need as much graphics card horsepower to actually drive it in the first place. Games like Warzone play their absolute best when running over 100 frames a second, but you're going to need a beefier graphics card and then a specialist display to properly utilize this. But they don't have to be expensive. There is an AOC monitor that costs around about £200 give or take, and this is going to maximise your chances of winning the games, even if your pockets aren't particularly deep at the moment. Personally speaking, I think that 144Hz Quad HD is probably going to be the sweet spot for most people at the moment, as it's sharper than Full HD 1080p that you've probably been using, but then you get all of the benefits of higher refresh rate without being too difficult to drive. With this all in mind, you can then move on to the components. And no, don't start looking at things like cases, RGB fans, none of that. The most important thing to look at is the CPU and the GPU, the processor and the graphics card. Because you see, these are the two pieces of the puzzle that's going to directly determine your outright gaming experience, and they should always be chosen first. Your graphics chip is the most important of the two, and most of your budget will probably want to be allocated here. AMD and Nvidia both have compelling offerings at the moment, and a best GPU doesn't really exist. Just make sure that you do pick something that can play the games that you actually want to play at the settings and resolutions that you're looking for. If you do need a little bit of help with this, then there's someone that can help you out. I do loads of graphics card reviews, plenty of full PC builds from start to finish, all of them show benchmarks, so if you do need a little bit more help choosing a graphics card, then you can find all of this information in the end screen. But don't be fooled into thinking that all cards are created equally though, because they're just not. One RX 6800 is not going to be the same as the next, as while the raw GPU performance should be roughly the same, the different cooling solutions and factory clock speeds will mean that the temperatures, overclocking potential, and the noise levels will vary considerably. As always, it's all about balance. The Zotac Twin Edge RTX 3070 that I tested a couple of months ago was cheaper, but it was just too noisy. Whereas the RTX 3060 Ti Strix Edition, this card was fantastic, arguably one of the best in the business, but it was priced so expensive that it just should not be bought. Once you're settled, it's then time to think about your processor. And again, there's no best option, as while Intel is definitely not the champion it used to be, they still offer amazing gaming CPUs, and some of them will offer better value for money than a Ryzen chip. It'll all change from game to game, but as a general rule, a budget gaming PC needs a 4-core chip, a mid-range 6, and then a luxury battle station, you're probably looking at 8 or more. Just note that lower resolution, high frame rate gaming is actually very CPU intensive, so don't go thinking that a 1080p 240Hz monitor is in the budget category, because it really isn't. Once you've decided on the processor, next up is the motherboard. Oh, I love motherboards, they're so much fun. To be fair, I do quite like motherboards these days, they are quite fun. The good thing is that assuming you've chosen your CPU already, this bit is pretty easy to be honest. As us gamers don't need much, Wi-Fi support is critical if you don't have a wired connection, overclocking support is very handy if you want to get the most out of your CPU and the RAM, but otherwise there's not really any extra functionality that most of us really need. You've got 3 main sizes to choose from: ITX, Micro ATX, and then Mini ITX. In 2021, you're probably looking at a Z590 motherboard for an Intel chip, and then a B550 for Ryzen. Both of these will support a PCIe Generation 4 SSD, which is a great addition if you have a little bit extra cash to spend on a future-proof, blazing fast SSD, but it's by no means essential. Just be aware that a Z490 motherboard and then B550s won't necessarily support the newest CPUs from Intel and AMD respectively. They probably won't work out of the box. And the reason for this is because the BIOS, the basic input and output system, is only as new as the time it was manufactured, and if the chips weren't around, then obviously they won't support them. The solution to this problem though is pretty simple. You're after a motherboard that supports USB BIOS flashing, which is that you can actually update your motherboard to support the latest generation chips without needing an older generation CPU, which, let's be honest, most of us just don't have on hand. There you go then, got all of that? Definitely a little bit more complex than a console, but here comes the absolute best bit. Choosing the look of your gaming PC, something you can't do on console. Now your core components are all sorted, the rest is down to personal taste. There really are so many slick looking cases out there, just pick one that matches your style, and then has enough airflow to match your build. The memory, or RAM, is pretty easy, as you're going to want to invest in a 16GB kit that runs at least 3200 MHz to get the best experience. And the beauty of this is that it is an incredibly easy upgrade to do in the future if you need more capacity or just want to save a little bit of money up front. Cooling is a very similar story, as it's an easy upgrade to make if you have a stock cooler. You can pick between air and water cooling, with air being much cheaper these days, but water cooling arguably does look a lot better, and in some cases it will perform better to boot, so the choice is entirely yours. Make sure that you get enough storage to actually fit all of the games that you want to fit on the drive. 500GB is usually fine for a starter PC, but 1TB or more is probably preferred. There's not that much point going for SATA unless you can get a very cheap drive. I would always go for NVMe these days. PCI Generation 4 is worth considering, but if you're trying to save money or you just don't have a big budget, this is one of the first things I would probably drop down on. A power supply, meanwhile, is definitely essential. And please, please, please don't go buying a super cheap power supply, as in some cases it genuinely might explode. Really not a mistake you want to make. Instead, work out exactly how much wattage you need with a PSU calculator tool, and then buy from a respectable brand. It is okay to spend more on these things, but remember that this won't directly affect your frame rate, so do be aware of diminishing returns. And then finally, don't forget that you do need to actually factor in a copy of Windows. It's a Windows machine after all, and if you don't already have one that you can transfer from an older computer, you will need to buy a new license. It's completely free at first, but you're going to have to activate it. So if you do want to check out current pricing on Windows, or I guess any of the parts that have been featured in this video, then you can check them out with my Amazon affiliate links listed down below. Let me know your thoughts on this though. Is there anything that I've missed? Do you think that there should maybe be a different order of magnitude? That's a cool phrase, not sure if it makes sense, but I'm going to leave it in regardless. If you've enjoyed this video, then please smash that like button. It honestly helps out so much. If you need some more help choosing out gaming PC parts, or you just want to see more of me, then you can by hitting that subscribe button. It's free. There you go, free PC gaming advice. And of course, while you're down there, don't forget to check out Gigabyte's Gaming OC graphics cards. Available in a wide range of GPUs, this triple fan WindForce cooler has you covered. It's a card that's not only able to deliver next generation visuals and frame rates, but one that's able to stay cool and quiet under full load. Give your PC the love it deserves with Gigabyte Gaming OC. Level up your experience today with that link down below. Thank you so much for checking it out. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one.